Okay, so this is the XLI. Very critical. There's a trough due 1223 to 310. RS weekly is down. Does it hold down? Right? If it holds negative, that raises the odds that there's still one more test lower, or the low has formed here. So rather than seeing this as, well, is that low in or not? Nobody's going to know that, right? So how do you try to actually build a trading plan around this? Well, this is where you have to use the short term to help you. Okay, so the RS here on the daily is down and it curled and it turned positive. That is telling you there needs to be a shift. So this is a 42 bar with our next trough due somewhere around the early to mid-May time period as well. Short-term trend is now turning neutral. So what is that saying? The bias is starting to shift. It is read very technically, but close to turning neutral, and it should, with just some sideways price action here. What that says is the bias is shifting. So in the short term, if you are looking for an opportunity, what I would be looking at is if we hop over now to the 2 hours, since there was a question about this in Discord, the 2 hour RS is also positive. If we see a pullback here in the context of a rising 2 hour RS and slim ribbon, that is in all likelihood going to set up an opportunity for this to drift back higher. So what I like to do is, if I am unsure in terms of what's going on the weekly, whether there is a low here or we have one more dip, focus on the shortest time frame that you can and go with what is clear. And what is clear is that there has obviously been a shift. This is a clear base, right? There's been a shift in bias. We have now worked our way out of the base. And now I will be looking at this to be an opportunity for a turn back to the upside. All right. And in terms of those EMAs, 134.70 to 133.65, if you draw your fibs in, be pretty close to that. So somewhere around 134.28 to 133.55 is where I'd be looking for this to hold. You can see a bit of a confluence in terms of the EMAs and the fibs, so somewhere around there. I'd like to see this hold, and if it starts to lose on a daily basis the 61.8 at 132.81, well, that will get a bit more negative. So that's only about 150 of risk. And then in terms of the upside, again, we have to be thinking on these terms. It isn't just what is our bias. That's the easiest thing to say. The thing that is far more complicated is, how do you actually structure your trade, right? That is really what it comes down to in the end. So on the upside, you can see that there's a 50 up there, the 137.58. So what did we say? We said about 150 or so in risk, 240 to 314. 240 divided by 150, bring over your calculator here, 240 divided by 150, 1.6 to 1. Okay, that's a reasonable setup. That's literally what I'm doing here, is trying to understand where can we set up an opportunity, right, where it makes sense in terms of a risk here, in this case on the downside, to what would be the targets on the upside. So these would be my targets. This would be a way that I would set up an opportunity. I don't know if that weekly low is due, but it really doesn't matter, right? If you are a short-term trader, find a time frame that is short enough where there is clear information coming out of what you're looking at, where you have a clear level that says, okay, well, this is where I would be buying. This is where my stop would be. This is where my targets would be. This is the overall risk to reward. Does it make sense? Does it meet my personal parameters? And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. If it works, it worked, right? Again, that goes back to process versus outcome, right? I actually looked at this last week. Good process, good outcome, good process, bad outcome, bad process, bad outcome, bad process, good outcome. Figure out what box you're in. Don't focus on the outcome so much. Focus on the process, and it will significantly help you in the long term if you are finding uncertainty on a higher time frame. Go down a little bit to a time frame where you're seeing clarity, as long as that is fitting inside of your strategy. Okay, so this is a perfect use case here in XLI, and hopefully that answered your question.